Welcome to the Athena Wellness Podcast, the show that invites you to take a seat around the community fire and listen to stories that inspire. I'm your host, Kathy Robinson, author, coach, and founder of Athena Wellness, a company that's dedicated to supporting you on your journey to live more wholeheartedly. Today's episode is brought to you by the Athena Wellness Academy, your resource for wholehearted living. The Academy's featured offering is an online course called From Type A to Type B, How to Mindfully Descend the Corporate Ladder and Invite What's Next. This course is perfect for you if you're contemplating or navigating a professional transition, and it's available as a self-study or with a small cohort of students facilitated by me, Kathy Robinson. To learn more, I invite you to go to athenawellnessacademy.teachable.com or click on the link in the show notes. Hello and welcome. Thanks so much for joining me. Navigating life changes is not a new topic for this podcast, but today's guest hit what she calls the trifecta of life changes that included an empty nest, the end of a 30-plus year marriage, and the sale of her business. In the wake of such change, as she dealt with profound identity loss, she made the decision to walk the Camino, 500 miles of pilgrimage routes from France to Spain. I'm joined today by author and traveler C.K. Collins, also known as Kelly. During her travel sabbatical, Kelly wrote a book titled The Swipe Right Effect: The Power to Get Unstuck. Here's what we cover: how hiking and travel became effective healing practices, what it was like to walk 500 miles along the Camino, the powerful question Kelly walked with during her pilgrimage, how she learned to trust and practice manifestation, and how she carries the impact and lessons of the Camino today. You can learn more about Kelly at ckcollins.co, and I'll put links to her website and book in the show notes. And now on to the show. I hope you enjoy this transformative conversation. Kelly, welcome to the Athena Wellness Podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
So please share a bit about who you are and what you do.
I am an author, and my pen name is C.K. Collins. But in my previous life, which was actually just a year ago, I was a news publisher, and I really loved being in the business. I owned my own company, and we built up to 8 hyperlocal online news sites for all the different small towns and counties around Nashville. And I sold that in 2021 and retired and started traveling for a year. And I'm a big solo traveler. I really love it. I did a whole year of traveling. And in that time, I kind of outlined my book and settled down and wrote. And it just kind of came naturally. It's a dream of mine to do it. So it's been really cool.
It's amazing what the road can do for a writer, right?
Yes, exactly. Time to think.
Absolutely. And to process and you're able to relate some of the things that you're feeling with some of the things that you're seeing, and you wind up learning things that you normally wouldn't, right?
Yeah, you learn from the people you meet and the cultures, and it's an amazing experience.
And so speaking of experiences, you experienced a big life change a number of years back. And so just as a frame for our discussion, what would you like to share about that time with our listeners?
When I had been married 30 years, I discovered that there had been infidelity in my marriage, and it quickly unraveled. Turned out that there'd been gaslighting going on for a few years, and I was just completely devastated. And it was really the trifecta of life change happening all at the same time. I was an empty nester. I was getting divorced. And because of the divorce, I was considering selling my business. And so I really lost 3 identities all at the same time. I was writing about this recently going, yeah, wow, that was powerful, like to have that much change in your life. And the good thing about it was it did cause change, and it did lead to some really beautiful things happening in my life.
The identity loss, we don't really think about that. So I do a lot of work with women who go through transitions, most of them leaving long-term corporate careers, and don't anticipate what it's like when you don't get to say, I'm fill in the blank of what that title is. And so you were going through that. Plus, you're still a mom, but a mom in a different way, and no longer the wife that you were. And so there is just this whole, it's a conglomerate of change. I mean, that's a lot to go through. And you did a very interesting thing. You already said that you like solo travel. So you were doing hiking and you were doing some traveling. What was it about those practices? And I'm calling them practices because they sounded very therapeutic to me. What was it about those practices that resonated with you?
Well, the hike I decided to go within 3 or 4 weeks. Now, I knew about this hike. It's called the Camino de Santiago, and I'd known about it for a while because one of our best friends had already done two different hikes into Santiago. And it's a spiritual hike. You're there, you have your backpack on, 20 pounds or less, and it's you and that backpack. Turns out you actually meet a lot of people, but it was my restart button. And some of the things I learned for training for that was, that I needed to let some things go so that new things could happen. And I called it my walking therapy. So I had about 4 months to prepare. And I have a lot of girlfriends that I had done half marathons with and had been hiking with. And so I just lined them up. So like, I got to hike 12 miles today. How about you? You're 3, you're 5, and you're 3, and I'll meet you at these different places. And starting to really organize my time beyond what I had done, even with half marathon training, because that's pretty time consuming. But that opening up and sharing, and it wasn't a one-way sharing. They were opening up and sharing to me. And because I was in so much pain and they were making space for me, it was like, as it was pouring out, it was also, it was also evaporating in some ways. Like my friend Kay, who's a beautiful, beautiful soul, says, grief is like water. The more you spread it around, the more it evaporates. And so I felt like that's what was happening. And it became this practice that I learned to reciprocate, to open up. And then they started opening up to me, and I realized things were going on in their lives that I didn't know about. And so it was just like this reciprocal sharing. But really it's that. And then when I got to Spain, boy, the sharing and the making space for people, complete strangers, just changed my life. And I try to practice that to this day. I mean, if I can help somebody, the way I was helped, it actually feels so good. And it's just a good life practice just to make space for people.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk more about the walk, but before we get into your personal journey, for people who don't know what the Camino is, can you just give us like, where is it? Why do people do it? And what's it like? And you said 20 pounds or less in your pack. I was unaware that was the case. Is that like a hard and fast rule?
Oh, no, not a rule, but that was my rule because it's really a body weight rule. I'm only 5'4" and fairly small framed, except for my hips. So, which was a good landing spot for that backpack. I have to say, they came in handy.
Huh?
So, yeah. So I learned about this from my friend Bill, and he had been through a huge life change, divorce, lost his company. It was pretty similar actually, but same but different. And he was not a religious person by any means, but he was really intrigued by the spirituality behind the Camino. So there's 28 different routes. There's one really famous one called the French way. So Camino means the way, the path. And de Santiago, it means of St. James. And so biblically, all of these routes were walked by St. James. And he was going in, Spain was inhabited by the Moors at the time, and he was trying to spread Christianity. And he died, and the supposed remains, alleged, I'll use my news background, the alleged remains are in a cathedral in Santiago. Again, Santiago means St. James. So this whole church, the way the Catholic Church worked back then is, if a church had the body of a saint or some kind of relic, then that was a moneymaker and people would pilgrimage to it. And so there's about 250,000 people a year that do just the French way. And it starts in the French Pyrenees in this beautiful little town called Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which I think means gateway to footpath or something close like that. And Saint John in French is James. And so this beautiful little town just kind of focuses on pilgrims 9-10 months out of the year. And it starts there and you go up and over the French Pyrenees. And then you're in Spain right when you go over the top. You're in the Navarre region. And you walk to Pamplona and Leon and Burgos and all the way to Santiago. And it's 500 miles, 800 kilometers. And it's full of people who are there trying to figure out something with their lives, to solve a big problem or answer a big question. And my experience was, even if you went there without a question, you ended up with some kind of answer anyway.
Mm-hmm. That leads me beautifully to my next question, which is, you actually, the first person that you met gave you a wonderful question to walk with, which was, what do you want for yourself? So I'm curious what that was like. Like, how did that hit you when this person that you didn't know presented you with that invitation?
I just kind of, I think I just was caught off guard. And I said, well, I don't really know what I want. I know what I don't want. And then she asked me if I'd ever done a vision board before. And I kind of rolled my eyes and said, no, I never done it. Like, no, that's not for me. And I mean, I've just got a backpack. I don't have a cork board or poster board. I was being a little bit of a smart aleck and trying to be funny. And she said, take out your phone. And she just happened to be a psychotherapist. I just got lucky. And she said, open your notes app. And I was like, okay. And she said, just start making a list of words, things that make you happy, experiences that make you happy. And she says, and just keep adding to that list. And I got really excited when I started writing these things down, because it started bringing back memories from the happier parts of my life. And, whatever it was, hugs from behind, or traveling with my children, running in a new city. I mean, I would go to conferences for work all the time. And I used to love to go out for a run in Denver and see something completely different, or wherever I was, fun in Chicago. And so simple little things like that, I started writing down, and then I ended up sharing it with people as I went. And so many people pulled out their phones and started making a list of what they wanted. So that one thing she said to me paid forward to a lot of other people. And they would share with me some things, and I would be like, oh yeah, I love that too. I hadn't thought to put that on my list. And so it was just a beautiful experience from one simple statement, that she made.
And then when you got home, were you intentional in trying to incorporate those things into your life, or like, how did that list manifest in your life?
Well, that on the Camino is where I learned about manifestation too. I just didn't know. I mean, I grew up pretty surrounded by religion, and you just don't talk about that in the Methodist church. Not that I know of anyway. But they kept saying that, these aren't just words. These are things that you can bring to life. Like, if you focus on them, then. And I remember, to me, the most poignant thing that especially business owners could relate to, I decided that I wanted to sell my business. I said, I want to sell my business. And right under it, I wrote, I want to sell my business for X. I said a dollar amount. And I could not see how I could possibly get that much money, even though I had a great business and we had great readership in a very wealthy county. I couldn't see it. And that was probably just self-confidence at that point. But I ended up getting that exact amount, like almost to the dollar for what I had manifested in that moment. And I stayed focused on that number. Like, I went to my business broker and I was like, how do I get this much? And he helped me make it happen. And that taught me a valuable lesson, to the point where I want to talk about manifestation. And I don't believe it's anti-religious or anti-God. I think it's having a relationship with God. It's having a relationship with the universe, and having a confidence, an inner confidence that I matter enough to say what I want. And so I really think that's a lesson about manifestation, and it's not just about saying, I want this, I want this, I want this. It's believing in yourself and believing that you deserve that. I think it's a huge part of it.
And believing that you're part of the source that you're communicating with, right?
Yes, right. The divine within, like that's who you're having that conversation with.
Exactly. So it can be very religious if you think about it in that way, right?
Yeah. Well, I've had a conversation with my mom last week where I was in town for her 80th birthday. She's like, I'm reading The Secret, the book you told me to read, and I'm having a little trouble with it, with the whole how I see church and how I see God. And I said, I feel like manifestation is prayer. If you look at manifestation is asking for what you need, prayer is asking for what you need. Part of manifesting is being grateful for what you want. Prayer is saying, thank you, God. I said, it's the same thing to me. I don't look at them as separate church and state. I believe they're one and the same. I just happen to believe in God, but I also believe God has created this universe that I'm in, and he put me here for a reason, and that I'm just as important as anybody else. And I didn't used to feel that way. And I'm so grateful I do. And I believe you are, and my mom is. And, we're all really important, and we're important to other people. So it's important overall to kind of understand how we all work together and how we help or hinder each other.
And I wonder what the link is. I mean, you started with trying to articulate what it is that made you happy, which was a new exercise for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so connecting to that energy.
Yeah.
And then going on to the manifesting is it feels like a very natural flow, although maybe you don't realize the connection there. But I'm curious now, since you've gone on to not only write that list, but incorporate some of those things, manifest some of the things that you wanted. If you were to write a list like that today, without getting into the specifics of what would be on it, what would change? What do you think would change just, at a higher level? Like, would it be, I would suspect it would be easier for you to be able to do that now.
Yeah, it's interesting. I read a book called The Magic recently, and it's a 28-day gratitude practice. And I had a gratitude practice, but this was just like kind of deepening that. And they do it over 28 days, adding new things in because it gets more powerful and more powerful and more powerful. And it's really different ways to think about ordinary things that happen, like being grateful for the lady at the grocery store who's checking your groceries, because without her, you wouldn't be able to take food home, right? So it's that simple, but that in depth, so being grateful for everything around it. And so I think thinking like that has changed how I form my list. And because I have this new happy life, like my big thing is I want other people to have this big happy life. I don't want them to feel like I felt. I want to help them expedite that. You don't have to feel like I did for 4 years. It's and everybody does have their own timeline, and you do have to walk through all of the steps, but there's certain things that you can do and certain ways you form that list that can help you heal quicker and get in tune with your soul to the point where those hard things can come out and they're not trapped.
Yeah. I think you're talking about trying to help people become more aware of what their options are, right? Because I wonder, if you didn't have those 4 years, would you be in the same place that you're in today?
Right. But I had people who said, here's a little, that's what in my book. I mean, that's like each chapter is a piece of advice and a thing where somebody kind of pulled me along. And so I'm just in a position now where I want to help when people are ready. I'm here and I want to help them pull along. But you have to be ready.
You mentioned your book, and we should say it's called The Swipe Right Effect. And we'll tell people how to get that toward the end of the podcast. But there's a passage in the book that really struck me. You were speaking to a friend and you said, I was doing everything I could to be a good person without ever addressing my own stuff. And that really, I think it struck such a chord, because there was such truth in that, of like, sometimes we try to do color within the lines and stay within these guardrails, thinking that we're doing the right things. And sometimes we're doing it at a disservice to ourselves. So I was wondering the spirit in which you meant that, and then how you worked with that.
Man, I was writing about this the other day too. I self-diagnosed, I'll admit. I really had a bit of a hero complex. And I know not everybody's heard of that, but the savior complex or the hero complex. So the busier I was, the more important or more needed, when I look back at it through lens of ego, the more important I felt. And so I wanted to try to do everything I could at work. And I didn't give away responsibility in a way that could have been empowering people. I felt like I needed, without me, this business is going to fall apart. And it luckily proved me wrong when I went on the Camino for 7 weeks. But that was really the beginning of that lesson, to realize I wasn't working on my own stuff. I was so busy trying to help other people, fix other people. I mean, mission trips and youth group. And I was overly involved. And what I had to learn was to be in a situation where I'm being helpful, being caring, being loving without me being the catalyst for what was happening. And that, I think that space, opening that space up and letting someone else have their moment, I was always trying to relate myself to that moment. I was always trying to connect with them instead of just let them have that space. And I hired one of my really good friends, Sherry, and she said, I'll be your CFO while you're on the Camino. And she came in and she was like, wow, you just try to fix everything. She just came into the office and was watching me. And she says, so now you have 3 months until you leave. Every time somebody says, Kelly, can you do this? Can you change the menu on the website? Can you do that? You say, nope, but I can show you how. And that was a huge evolving, really maturing for me, because I really did think without me, everything was going to fall apart. It's sad, but true. And so I think once I stopped trying to fix everything for everybody else, I could see the challenges that I had within, and I could start working on that.
And probably was the source for this happiness that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
It's good to let that stuff go, doesn't it?
Yes. Heck yes.
Another impactful passage was on trusting the journey and asking for signs along the way. So this was like baby manifestation steps at the very beginning, where you were specifically asking to see certain things. So could you share a story where this helped guide you when you were in a difficult space along the Camino, and how it shaped the way you live your life today?
Well, the same person who said to me, let's make a list of words, also pointed out to me that she's like, oh, look, there's a rock, a heart rock. And she picks it up and shows it to me. And it's just a rock shaped like a heart. And I was like, I have never seen one of those before. And she said, you weren't looking for one. And I started going, there's more to that statement than finding heart rocks. But from that day on, I see heart rocks everywhere I go. I'm annoying about it. You should ask my friends. That to me, it's metaphorical for I'm always now looking for love. And I don't mean that in a romantic sense, although that would be cool too. I mean that I want to live a life filled with love. And so I just see those heart rocks everywhere. And every time I do, it's like the positive trigger instead of a negative trigger. Like, oh, look, oh yeah, I just love in my life. Yeah. Oh, I love this friend I'm walking with. And I use it in a way to remind myself of how blessed or graced, whatever you want to call it, how lucky I am. And I think it really came into play for me as well when I was trying to decide whether to go on the Camino. And I had this 24 hours where it was just like, Bill called at the right moment. He made me watch this movie called The Way. I watched The Way and I said, oh my God, I've got to talk to Karen, because she'd been on a pilgrimage in Iona, Scotland. And I walked across the room and she called me 7 seconds later. And then I go to the office and I pick up a devotional I haven't touched in 2 years. open it up to that day, and it says, I will walk with you on this path. You're going through a dark valley and you don't have faith. I need you to go on, you're making choices to stay safe. And I just went, okay, I'm going already. And it's not to say, and I try to be really honest with that, I still have hard days. I mean, I'm not perfect Pollyanna Kelly. I had a trigger recently, but it shot up, and I was able to use what I've learned to bring myself right down the other side of that. Meditation, look in the mirror and go, you got this, woman. You're strong, you're smart. You don't have to deal with that anymore. And so I think it's really important to acknowledge, no matter how happy or grateful you are, there are still tough moments in life. But if you have that gratitude practice and you spending time quieting yourself and trusting yourself and listening to your intuition, the hard moments lessen in severity.
I'm so glad you said that, because it's not about making the challenges go away. It's having the inner resilience and the trust that, yep, this is just another season of life, and I've gotten through this before, and I can handle this. And so I appreciate the way that you're framing it, because I think that it has a lot more truth than, just putting on these rose-colored glasses and everything.
Yeah.
Okay, right?
No, I mean, there's definitely challenges going on right now in my life. My mom's in the hospital. My daughter's upset about something to do with her job, and I mean, there's things going on that there's a great speech on Facebook, and it's probably other places too, by the Duke women's basketball coach. And it's, I cannot remember her last name, but her first name's Kara, Kara. And she has a speech. And if you Google, do the hard things better, learn to do the hard things better. Like, life isn't easy. I think that's what the gratitude practice and the meditation practice, and having a vision for your life and having a life purpose statement, a mission statement. These are all things that you can just constantly go, and it's like writing a marketing platform. You write the marketing platform, and then you pull from that and you stick to that. So build this platform for your life and you stick to that. You don't, oh God, I'm spiraling out because he said something to me, or he did something and that triggers me. Well, then I have these tools now that I can go back and go, okay, meditation. Okay, I'm going to do something nice for myself today. Whatever it is. Self-care.
It's a toolkit, and then having the discipline to use the toolkit.
Yes, that's very key.
Toward the end of your book, you share the respect that you had for your fellow pilgrims, and that pilgrims have for each other along the way. I'm wondering how this experience changed the way you see others in your daily life. You alluded to the fact that there's been a change, like you carry something with you, but what does that look like in your daily life?
I mean, when you're on the Camino, it's a simple existence. You wake up, you eat, you walk, you eat, you walk, you eat, you walk, you shower, you go to bed. And there's really nothing else in there except your communication with others, or the sharing, and sometimes I was very purposeful in separating myself from others, because if I just keep talking to Joe from Sweden, he's so cool and he's so fun, I'm not going to do my work. I'm here to work. And so, but when I came home, everything was so deep and so personal, and so, how people say, like, I'm from the 30,000 foot view, I'm right here on ground level, and that's where I wanted to stay. But when you come home, you're dealing with work drama and church drama. You got to go speak at the chamber. And all these things that seem really overwhelming when you come back, and you have to kind of re-assimilate back into it. But I was really able to see other people's pain so much better when I got back, because I was slower to move. I was more intentional with watching how people were interacting with each other or interacting with me. And it was really hard to come back. But once I did, I had to keep pulling back from like that toolkit, the beginning of my toolkit. That was my starter set. But I hope that answered your question.
Yeah. And, it just made me think about something you said at the beginning of this conversation. So when we started, we were talking about this profound identity loss, right? These changes that you were going through, this identity loss.
Mm.
And you quote another author in your book, and that quote is, "The way is the path, and what you learn is you've always been on this path, and you'll always be on this path. This is your path."
Mm.
And with that as a backdrop, I wonder how, you came back completely, you lost who you were before you left. You had no identity on the path. You were pilgrim, right? It's a scallop, right? Isn't it an insignia?
Scallop shell. Yep.
And then you come back not really knowing. Like you're in this liminal space of it's not your old life. You don't know where you're going. So from an identity loss perspective, how did you regain and find ways of describing who you are now in this new life where I can feel the happiness when I speak to you. Like there's certainly a glint in your eye that I'm guessing maybe wasn't there for a little bit. So tell me what that process was like.
It's funny because our 31st anniversary was on like the pinnacle day on the Camino. And I heard that day that our house had sold. And so I had this huge moment of grief, swiftly followed by relief. But I had to, start processing moving out of that house, 17 years worth of stuff, all the kids' stuff, from kindergarten pictures to high school trophies. It was quite the process. And so I actually had to walk through a lot, and I just held so tight to Kelly the Pilgrim. Like she was the identity that I had to hang on to until I could get through that and get through the divorce. So I went in May of 2018. July, the house is done and gone. And by October, I had sold the business, October 1st, 2018. So a lot happened in 1 year. And it was like October 17 when I found out about the infidelity. So it literally was like a year of complete and total change. And I think I just stayed with Kelly the Pilgrim for a good another year. And then because I had a 3-year commitment starting from October 1, 2018, I had this point at which I could look. And so I talk to people about that now. Just put a pin in a calendar and say, by this day, I will blank. And that's what I did. By October or September 30th, 2021, I will have options. I will be free to move about the country if I want. And I don't know what that looks like. And I just started kind of building mental dream boards. I could go this way. I could have a heart for the news business, and especially small single owner news publishing companies that a lot of them are journalists and don't know the business side. So I had a real big heart for that because I was the business side of that. And I had a heart for nonprofit work. I was on several boards in my hometown and I thought that would be satisfying. That would be rewarding to maybe go do that nonprofit path and help people. But then this whole other vision came when one day I just had this moment that I am living a new version of my old life. And this is not what I want for myself. And that was just a huge, I had bought a house. I had moved the stuff in. I'd bought a new couch and a new bedroom set, but everything else was the old life. And so I'm surrounded by it. And I just went to my brother and said, what if I retire? Probably temporarily. But what if on September 30th, 2021, I retire and I travel for a year and I try to find the new me? And he's like, let's check it out. And got the whiteboard out and he wrote up all these options of what that would look like if I did it for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year. And we even did a permanent retirement, which I couldn't imagine because I love to work. And he made it possible in my mind. And so sometime in the summer of 21, I turned in my notice. I gave, I think 2 months notice. because I was still running my company for them, which was now their company. And so I wanted to give them as much notice as I could to find my replacement and make sure that I didn't want my baby, to not survive without me. There was my hero complex again. But yeah, and I did it. And it was just a game changer. I sold my house and I gave away everything in it. It was a 3,000 square foot house. And I gave away everything except a 5x5 storage unit worth of memories, the stuff I wanted to hang on to that, children's stuff and my art. I love my art. So I didn't want to get rid of that. But I mean, it was just a huge shift. And that's all my path. I mean, it's still all the same path. It's all still Kelly the Pilgrim.
What's fascinating, though, is that this path that you traveled, to another continent to be able to walk actually led through your past before you could get to your future, right? You had to go through all the stuff. You had to release all of the stuff.
Right.
You actually got there. So that's incredible.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. Yeah. I had to go back through my past. Yeah. They go through everything twice, really. Because when I left the marital house, we had to go through everything. And then when I gave it all up for good, I had to go through everything again.
Good lessons learned. So please tell us a bit about your book, your offerings, and how listeners can get in touch with you.
Oh, thank you for that opportunity. My book is called The Swipe Right Effect, The Power to Get Unstuck. And each chapter is a little pay it forward advice that I was given. And so each chapter I interview a different friend and we talk about the advice they gave me. Sometimes we talk about why they gave it to me, what they were seeing in me that made them speak up. And then they tell their story of how they learned that piece of advice. And they're very powerful, riveting stories. They were very open and beautiful souls. And I think people can really learn from all of our stories. So it's really kind of like, I call it 11 mini memoirs. But yeah, in each chapter, I also share my story. And then at the end of the book, I do talk about dating because it is part of, after you have it's weird to start dating in your 50s. Super weird. And I want to comfort people to know that it's just as hard. I don't have the answers. This is not a book about dating. This is a book about, I do a play on words. Swipe right is from a dating app. To swipe right, you're choosing someone. You just kind of go on their picture. But I'm saying swipe right for yourself. And that's the effect. The effect is you get unstuck. And so it has empowerment practices in each chapter. I just wanted to give the reader as much as I could about what I learned over those 4 hard years, and also what it feels like to be on the other side and wanting to give back. And I'm planning a retreat for women in September. I don't have that public on my website yet, but at ckcollins.co. People can look for that. The retreat will be here in Newport, Rhode Island, and in a beautiful home, peaceful atmosphere. And I one of the biggest things I've learned is that sharing is one of the biggest healing things that you can do, whether you're on the receiving end or the giving end. It's healing for both parties. And so I really want to bring women together to have the opportunity to do that if they're feeling stuck. So give it a shot.
Sounds wonderful. And I'll link everything up in the show notes. And such a wonderful conversation. I thank you so much for being here, Kelly. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I know there are many ways you can spend your time. Thank you for choosing to spend it with me. Until our paths cross again, be kind to yourself and show your warrior spirit some love. If you know anyone who could benefit from today's episode, please pass it on. And many thanks for supporting the show by subscribing and leaving a review. It means a lot, and it helps others find their way to our circle. If you'd like to access the show notes, have a question you'd like addressed on a future episode, or would like a transcript of this episode, visit www.athenawellness.com/podcast. Until next time, be well.